And then we'll switch gears a little bit and give you a preview of some of the features that are currently under development and where we're going in the product. So, without further ado, Mr. Eric Saltwell.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Expression Web version 1.0, and I think I'm going to start that discussion with telling you a story about beer. So I started maybe 3 weeks ago. Our group program manager came to me, and he asked me to be involved in this presentation, and specifically to give a review of some of my favorite features in XWeb 1.0. And so I sat down, and my first thought was, I wonder what I should put on my first bullets in PowerPoint. And I had an idea. I said, maybe I'll start by taking a look at the back of the box and see what it has to say about the product. And so I did. I looked at the back of the box. I looked at some of our other marketing material. I looked at some of the reviews. And here's more or less what it said. It said, Expression Web is a great standards-based web design tool. In fact, it's Microsoft's first real professional web design tool offering. And we're good because we've got really great tools for working with CSS and features which allow you to work with rich types of data like XML and schemas of XML like RSS. And then after I saw that list, I kind of took a step back and I thought about it. And I said, okay, absolutely all of that stuff is true. But when I think about it, when I think about why I come to work today, when I think about that's better. Okay.
Right.
So when I see this list, when I think about, what does it mean for me? What does it mean to talk about XWeb? Why is it valuable? Why should any of you care? I don't know that this list completely sums it up for me. And so I went back to the drawing board and I said, what's maybe another way to tell a story about what is Expression Web? And that's when I hit upon the idea of talking about beer. So this story is actually a true story. And it comes from back when we were working on version 1.0 of Expression Web, and we were all kind of in our offices, busily coding away, when all of a sudden 2 guys appeared. And we were very quickly able to surmise 2 things about these individuals. First of all, they were Microsoft employees. And second of all, they were carrying a case of beer. These 2 guys were web designers who worked for Microsoft, and they were working on a product. And Microsoft had asked them to build the website for this specific product. And they really felt like they'd done everything right. They had built a site that was standards-based. They used CSS for layout. There wasn't a table anywhere in this site. They had really focused on accessibility. They wanted to be cross-browser compatible, all good stuff. But truth be told, they kind of had a hard problem. They had kind of a hard time with it. They had a fleet of cross-browser compatibility issues. In fact, even sometimes they just really felt like they had a hard time getting the CSS to do what they wanted it to do. And one day, after being particularly frustrated, they said, you know what? We've been debugging this bug in CSS for like 2 hours now. Let's go down the hall, talk to the XWeb team. Maybe they can tell us, maybe they can give us some help. And so that's what they did. And in this example that I'm going to show you, the problem specifically is that this red text here, which is this anchor, was showing up red rather than showing up white. And so they came to us and they said, hey, if you guys could help us out, help us figure out what the problem is, we'll be happy to share this case of beer with you, at which point we got very excited. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk you through a very quick demo that really is almost exactly what we did for these guys. And I'm going to do this as a way of starting to show you some of what Expression Web is about. So let me switch over to my demo machine. And what we did was we opened up their website in Expression Web. And the first thing we did was we selected the element that was the offender here. And then we used this collection of tools over on the left that we call the CSS properties pane in order to help debug the problem. So I'm going to walk through very, very quickly what is this pane. What you see here is a list of rules that are all applied to the selected element. And they're in the order that these rules are applied. And this is important because when you think about what causes CSS to be so hard to work with sometimes, very often it's about, well, where is this property being set and who's overriding it? And by looking at this list of rules, you can see what order it's applied and what element that rule is applied to. So here we see the body rule being applied to the body element. Now, if you look, you see at the bottom is the 5 properties that this body is setting. But notice that out of those 5 properties, 4 of them are crossed out. Why is that? Well, let me show you. If you look at there are typically 2 reasons. In any case, all of these properties will be crossed out because it says, you know what, this property is set on this rule, but it's not applying to the element that's currently selected. So what does that mean? Well, if you see here, you can see that this body rule applies to the body tag, and it's setting a padding of 0. But if you look at the tooltip there, it says, well, hey, the padding property is not one that's inherited. So you have a nested element inside the body, but of course, padding doesn't get picked up. The other reason why you might not see something be applied is because it's being overridden. And that's exactly what you see here. You see, okay, originally the body rule sets the font color to something close to black, but it gets overridden later on. Note, however, that the font family isn't crossed off because that actually is applied. And here this courier new is in fact being applied to that element. Okay, so that's interesting. And if you wanted to, you could walk through these rules to figure out what gets set where. But truth be told, that's a little cumbersome. And so instead, we have a helper tool, which is the summary button. And I'm going to click it here. And notice when I do, I see all the properties that are currently being set on this selected element. And I see that 3 colors are set. Notice when I select each color, it highlights a different rule in the list of rules to tell you where is it set. And so we can see that we did, in fact, set on the containing div. We did, in fact, set the color to white. But there's a more specific rule, which if we look at it is applying to anchor tags on the site, links, and it's setting this property to red. And if I were to take a look, I could take, if I hover over that rule, you'll see that I see the text of the rule. If I wanted to go to the code, I could hit go to code, and I can very clearly see, yep, we're just in general setting all links to red. And that's fine. And if you wanted to say, okay, but this specific link we want to set to white, what would I do? In this case, I'm going to do something very simple. I'm just going to go and create an inline style. So I say new inline style. Then I go down to the color property, and I set it to white. And now you can see that the text shows up white. If I ask to preview it in a browser, after asking me to save my changes, it'll show you in white. Sure enough, you'll see here that it set the color, and it set it, in this case, in an inline style, which is what we asked it to do. OK. That took me not too long, just a few minutes to talk about. But even in real life, when we did this with these people who came to us and asked us to solve this problem for them, of course, it took us less time. We didn't have to describe what is this CSS property grid. We didn't have to do any of that explanation. We just opened it up in the site, went to the summary button, about 12 seconds, and sure enough, much beer was to be had by my team. And many people were happy. OK, so why am I talking about this? Clearly, one of the reasons that I'm talking about this is because of the fact that I think this is a very interesting feature, right? I think this is very powerful, and I think this kind of problem is one of the things that crops up all the time if you're trying to create a very high-quality CSS-based website. And so I like that. But more broadly, the fact that this kind of scenario comes up all the time is very interesting to me. Because here's what I think. I think that the language of web design has gotten more and more expressive over time. And that's great, because it gives you a lot of power to create very high-quality websites. But of course, at the same time, it also creates a lot of complexity that you as the web designer now have to manage that complexity. And here's the thing. When I think about this, and when I think about Expression Web, sure, I think that Expression Web is a standards-based professional web design tool, and that we've got awesome tools for handling CSS and the ability to work with rich data. But the reason I come to work in the morning, the reason Boris and I and all of our product team get jazzed about working on Expression Web isn't just because of this. It's because for us, Expression Web is a tool that helps you to manage the complexity that is always going to be present whenever you're working and creating high-quality websites. And we know that part of that means that, OK, we're a design tool, and if we expect you to use us rather than some simple text editor, we're going to have to add value. We're going to have to keep you from doing as much grunge work as possible, right? We want to do that work for you. But if we're going to help you to create very high-quality websites, we have to leave you in control, right? We have to leave you to make the important decisions, not just about what your website looks like, but also about its underlying quality. Well, what does that mean? Let me answer that kind of with another question. And that's a philosophical question. And that question is, what does it mean to be bold? And when I say bold here, I mean in the typographical sense, not in the personality sense. Now, back in the old days of the web, this was a very, very simple question to answer, right? Because you just put B tags around stuff. There you go, bold, end of the story. Of course, today you would never do that, right? We prefer to use the strong tag because it's semantic markup, right? It tells not just your viewer, but even, let's say, search engines and other tools that, hey, this text is important. Maybe people want to style it themselves a specific way to recognize that importance. But maybe you don't want to provide emphasis. Maybe it's not semantically strong text, right? Maybe, instead, you really just want to provide bold to a font, in which case maybe you would put an inline style, right? Set the font weight. Or maybe you want to provide bold to a whole class of elements, in which case you don't do an inline style. In that case, you might provide a style rule that tags onto a selector based off of a class attribute, right? And if you do that and you have a separate style rule, there are a whole new world of questions to ask. Like, for instance, do I create a new style rule, or do I apply the font weight to an existing style rule? And if I create a new style rule, do I put it in the current HTML page, or do I put it in a separate external CSS page? And if I put it in an external CSS page, which page do I put it on? Here's the thing. All of these options I just showed you, they have the same visual effect. They all create bold. But that doesn't mean that these differences are unimportant. In fact, what I would tell you is that if you're interested in having a maintainable website, a readable website, really a high-quality, best practices, case study kind of website, then these differences are extremely important, and you should be using a tool that also thinks that these differences are important. So, I think I'm very passionate about this topic. And I think that Expression Web is really a great tool for working with websites where you want to control that underlying quality, but still have a tool that helps you manage the complexity that comes along with it. And I don't just mean the CSS property grid. I think we worked on a whole collection of features, all of which target this. So now I'm going to continue with my demo, and I'm going to show you a few more features that we have in Expression Web that helps you to manage your quality. All right, so I'm going to go back to the same website that I was at before, and now I'm going to make a few more changes. And just to drive the point home about bold, I'm going to set this element to be bold. Note that this is my main nav link, right? And here I've got all the different links for the main pages in my site, and I want to make them bold. So let's say I highlight one, and I hit the classic big B button, right? You see this in every WYSIWYG designer. So, how many of you think you can really accurately predict what the product's going to do on your behalf when you hit this big B button, right? There's all those different options, and I'm not sure which one it would do, except that I've run this demo about 100 times. Let me hit it, and let's see what happens. OK. And this created the strong tag. And that's pretty good, right? It didn't create the old style B tag. That's often exactly what you want it to do, but not always. And if it's not always the case, how can we ever expect you to work in a design view and still end up creating high-quality websites? Well, let me show you. So I'm actually going to get rid of this strong tag for a second. I'm just going to remove the tag. And let's do it another way. Now, if you look down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see here a whole bunch of helpers that are showing a bunch of data about Expression Web, the tool, and the websites. You see that the size of the page. You see that we currently have visual aids turned on, which is this kind of bordery area. And you see Style Application Auto. What's that? Well, we have two Style Application modes. They are Auto and Manual. And Auto is the mode that you would set this to if you were saying, look, I don't care what you do under the covers. As long as it looks right, I'm happy. Now, you probably, if you're going to create a large site, then this is probably not going to end up allowing you to create a very maintainable site. But if you're doing something quick and dirty, simple, why not? Why care about the details? In this case, we do, though. And so I'm going to bring up a toolbar that lets me pick that Style Application mode. So I just double-click down here. And now notice now that I have a new toolbar that lets me switch between Auto and Manual. And when I select Manual, notice what it does. It brings up a number of new properties, of which the one I'm going to focus on here is called the target rule. OK? So this is our way of allowing you to specify if I hit the bold button, if I hit the italics button, if I provide styling for my site, where does that styling go? So what's in this list? First, you see a rule that is, so you see all the rules that are currently applied to the current element. And this is the rule that applies to all links on your page. And this is the rule that applies only to links that are in this main nav area. I could also choose to create new inline styles when I provide styling or a new class. In this case, I'm going to choose the link that is specific to all of these links here. Now, I'm going to hit the bold button. And notice what happened. First of all of these guys became bold. And notice the lack of any strong tag. And when I click over here to the link, you'll see that we've set a higher font weight in order to provide this new value. Okay, I got to tell you, I love manual mode for Expression Web. I think it's a great way to give you all the convenience of being able to work in the design view, thinking really in visual idioms, but still giving you the control so that when you open up the site and you start to debug some CSS problem, you're not pulling your hair out. So let me extend this even a little bit further. Let me talk a little bit about, let's say we wanted to provide some extra styling. Over here at the top of the site, I have these two links, right? This is the sign in or the create new ID, right? It's register and log in. And let's say that you needed to do this. You either needed to register or log in order to get to certain pages, right? So it controlled access to certain parts of your website. For that reason, I call these my access controls. And I want to provide a little bit of visual emphasis to them. And I'm going to do that by using a tool over here called the Apply Styles task pane. This task pane lists all the styles that are available to your current page. And what it lists is, you can see it lists the one attached CSS style sheet that I have. If I'd had more than one attached style, it would have applied both. And you see styles that are declared in the current page in a style block, but of course I don't have any of those yet. And then here's some extra helpers. These are styles that are currently applied to the currently selected element. Okay, if I saw amongst this list of styles some style that I wanted to reuse and say, oh yeah, I just want to make it blue, let me do that. That's not what I want to do in this case. But if I did, all I would have to do is click and apply that style. And I'll show you that in a second. But first, I want to make a new style. I want to provide some new kind of emphasis. And I have two ways to do this, of course. I'm more of a coder guy. I would probably just go over to my styles CSS page. And I would use IntelliSense and all that good kind of coding stuff in order to declare that rule in code. But in order to show off a little bit of the app, let me show a second way to do it. And that's to click New Style. And here comes up a dialog box that asks me all the questions I would need to answer to be able to specify a new style rule. First of all, it asks me what's the selector, and I'm going to do a class selector with the name of access control, right? Because I'm going to only apply this to my access control elements. And I'm going to define it in the current page. And now let me provide some styling for it. I'm going to create a border that is solid and 3 pixels wide, and the same red color that I use on the rest of the site. Now, notice two quick things. I get a preview for what this looks like, and I also get drawn out. Here's the code that's going to be generated on your behalf, right? We always try to create really high-quality code on your behalf, but we also want to show you what we're doing. So if you disagree, you can choose not to take that option. OK, I'm going to hit OK. And the change that's happened now is that on the current page, I have declared this access control style. All right. All I need to do is click on it and notice that I've applied this style. Actually, let me edit it. I want to make one more change to my style. I just want to create some room between the text and my little emphasis. There we go, much better. And I'm going to do it again to the other one. OK, and if that was where I stopped, that'd be fine. But actually, we haven't hit what, for me, is the interesting part of this demo. So I think a very common scenario as a designer at this point is something like, I've created a visual effect. It's a visual effect that I like. And now I decide that I want to use it more broadly, right? Let's say instead now that I wanted to actually provide it even to this set of links down at the bottom. And because the currently selected page is the home page, I want to apply that same emphasis. Clearly, I could just click, and maybe I'd be done. OK, but there's a number of insidious problems here that you may not notice at first. OK, so what have I done wrong? First of all, these links are available not just on the current page, but in all pages. So declaring this style rule in the current page is probably inappropriate. Second of all, remember, I named this class selector access control. And that's not appropriate either now, because now I'm using it in a whole bunch of areas. And now my class doesn't really represent something semantic, like, hey, these are my access controls. Now it just represents some style. Hey, I'm providing some emphasis on the left part of this element. So I want to do these changes now, and I think this is kind of typical of the common types of changes, twiddlings, refactorings you do as you're working on your site. So let me do them, and I'm going to do them using this other pane here called Manage Styles. I'm going to very quickly talk about that. This is, again, all the styles in my page. Notice that I have a style declared in my current page. That's the access control I just created. And here's the list of all other styles. But here I don't provide you a preview. What am I providing you with, right? You notice there's a color here, and there's a circle around some of these. So what does this mean? The color is mildly interesting. It shows is this a tag-based selector or a class-based selector. If it's blue, it uses element selector syntax. If it's green, it uses class. Red, it uses ID. But the more interesting one is the circle. The circle tells me, am I even using this on the current page? If you want a good way to very quickly improve the quality of your website, just load up a page in Expression Web, go down here to current page, and see if there are any styles without a circle around it. If so, it means those styles aren't being used, and you can throw them out. You can get rid of them. That's not what I'm going to do in this case. In this case, like I said, what I want to do is move this style to my shared style sheet, and I want to rename it. So first, let me move it over. I'm just going to take it and drag it over. There you go. It's that easy. Notice that everything's still showing up correctly, and that's as to be expected. And now let me rename it. Now, if I were to rename this using a simple text editor, I would not only have to rename this class, but I'd have to find everywhere where I apply a class, perhaps across my whole website, and that might be thousands of cases. And now I'm going to open up some tool like grep or some search and replace and hope to gosh that it's not going to screw me up. But in this case, when I rename it to something very generic like left emphasis, and I click this checkbox that says rename class references, and I hit OK, it's not only going to rename the class, but it's also going to rename all the references for me. And because we want to make sure that we're doing what you want us to do, we provide a log where we can show you what did we do on your behalf. I'm not going to focus too much on that. All right, so I'm going to close this and see that now my class name has changed to left emphasis. It's left emphasis in my style sheet, and my styles are all being provided correctly. I have two last features I want to show in this demo where I talk about what type of tools do we provide you to help manage the quality of your website. And they both relate to reporting. So let's say I'm more or less done with my site. I'm getting ready to publish it out, and I just want to do a last check to make sure that I've got really a high-quality site. I'm going to run 2 reports that's going to help me query that and determine are there any issues that I need to fix. And we're really focused here on non-visual issues, right? Issues that represent the quality of your site, not just at its skin, but quality in depth. So I'm going to run an accessibility report that says, I want to check, in this case all pages, for these accessibility standards. And do I want to see errors or warnings? And sometimes there are some things in accessibility that a computer can't check for, where it's impossible to know without context whether or not something is right or wrong. So we also allow you to produce a manual checklist to just review. In this case, I'm going to show errors. I'm going to run it, and sure enough, it's going to find an error for me. So let's see what this says. If I hover over it, it says, oh, there's an image that's missing a text equivalent, right? The image is missing its alt tag. That's pretty common. If I double click, it'll take me to that image, and notice here's an image. And even if I wouldn't have run this report, you would see these red squigglies here, right? If at any time we detect many kind of common errors or flaws, we'll highlight them. So I'm just going to add an alt tag. And then I'm going to rerun the report. And it's gone, right? And now I'm going to run one more report, which is a compatibility report. This is a way to check, am I in compliance with some of the common standards? In this case, we're checking for XHTML 1.1 and CSS 2.1. We have an option to say, you know what, and if somebody declares a DTD in their page, don't listen to the setting I've supplied, listen to the DTD. So I'm going to run this report. And sure enough, it's going to find 2 problems for me. If I hover, it says, hey, there's a problem because all script tags must have a type attribute. And the second problem says, hey, according to XHTML 1.1, you have a script tag with an invalid attribute called lang. So let me go to these errors. And you'll see I clearly have some JavaScript. And I've used the old style lang attribute rather than using the new type. So I'm just going to replace that. And text JavaScript. And then I'm going to rerun the site, and there you go. Okay, So, what I hope you walk away from in this demonstration is the fact that Expression Web is a tool that we're working extremely hard on targeting towards helping you to manage the complexity that comes across whenever you want to create really high-quality, best practice-based websites. And we have a number of tools in the product that help you to do that. Expression Web 1.0, XWeb, is available already today. You guys all received copies in the Expression Studio box, the custom box that you received today when you earlier when you registered. If anybody is interested in providing people with trials of it, you can find it at Microsoft.com/expression. Okay, let me change gears for a second. I've talked a little bit about 1.0, and I think we want to start into moving to talk about the next version of Expression Web. Last year at MIX06, I was also here, and I didn't present at that point, but I had the opportunity to ask some questions, or to answer some questions, sorry. And in the course of answering the questions, I really tried to say, look, Expression Web 1.0 doesn't represent the end be-all of web design tools from Microsoft. In fact, it's the beginning. This is our 1.0 product, our first. And we really have places we want to take it. We want to make large-scale improvements, go in new directions, really all within this realm of helping you to manage very complex, high-quality websites. In our Expression Web 2 release, we're starting to go there. And where we're starting to go there is to say, you know what? All right, one of the first things we need to do to create a great web design tool for you guys is we knew we needed to work with things like CSS and give you tools for managing the complexity that comes along with that. And right now, we're really excellent at that. And especially when those sites are HTML-based sites, plain vanilla sites, we really are top class in that. And with 2.0, we wanted to extend that and say, you know what? We've heard feedback that said, of course, HTML isn't enough. You have to work with other modes. You have to work with other server technologies. And that's really where we're going with 2.0. And to talk about it, here is Boris Feldman.
Thank you, Eric. So, we've started out, and Eric has shown you a great example of how Expression Web can be used today with the product you already have to provide great maintainability and great support for standards-based websites. And I'm here to show you where we want to go and take the product in the future. So right now, Expression Web 2 is very much in development. We're working on it right now. And so these are some of the directions where we want to go and some of the places where we feel that we can really build upon the strong base that we have in our 1.0 products, some of which Eric has just shown you, to really take it to the next level and help you create really rich, really great websites. And so we want to provide better support for media. We want to provide support for PHP. A lot of our customers have asked for PHP support within the product, and we hear you, and we're going to do some of that. So yeah, we're going to support PHP. We're also going to provide support for ASP.NET Ajax right in the box. That'll make it easier for you to take advantage of some of those features easily with just installing the product. And so we're going to give you some of these demos. Furthermore, we understand that many of you guys work in a workgroup environment with developers, or in some cases you wear many hats. And so you may one day be the designer and the next day be the developer. And so we want to help some of that workflow and really enable you to work easily and well between our product and Visual Studio. We're going to take some work in that direction as well. And then finally, we have some updates to the product that you guys have all asked us for that may be smaller, but nonetheless help your everyday life, and so we want to take advantage of that as well. And I want to stress before I go on that everything I'm going to show you here is very much early, it's very much a development site, so we welcome your feedback. Please tell us. It will actually have a great chance of improving and creating a product that's more tailored to your needs. So, let's dive in. Media. What does it mean to support media? We want to provide great support in the product, right in the tool, for Silverlight, for the Windows Media Player ActiveX Control, and for Adobe Flash. And for us, that means really creating a compelling design time experience. We want to provide you a design surface preview of what your page is going to look like even before you run it within the browser. We want to provide support for both ASP.NET implementations of some of these technologies, as well as HTML and just JavaScript. And so today, in a little bit, I'm going to show you Silverlight and our support for ASP.NET. But whatever we do, we're going to focus on creating experiences that are similar and comparable for HTML and JavaScript just by themselves. So even if you deploy to a server that does not include ASP.NET, although we'd like you to, you will have a great, compelling experience. Now, Eric has talked to you a lot about the fact that we really want to focus on high-quality code, and that's absolutely true. And for us, that means a lot of things. And one of the things it means, especially as it relates to media, is that we want to create cross-browser, cross-platform code. So you write it once, you design it once, and whatever code we generate on your behalf or help you create on your own, we want it to run well on the Mac in Safari. We want it to run seamlessly in Firefox. And we want it to run well in Internet Explorer. And as part of our Internet Explorer support, as many of you know, Internet Explorer was modified a little while ago to change the behavior around hosting ActiveX controls. And now, in some cases, you'll see a click to activate prompt around a media element on the page. And so what we'll do when we generate media elements on your behalf is make sure that we generate the right JavaScript so your customers don't have to go through that experience. So let's take a moment, let's dive in, let's do a demo, and we'll show you the early thinking around what our Silverlight support is going to be like in the product. And unfortunately, this thing has gone to sleep on me. So you'll have to bear with me for just a moment. It takes just long enough for Eric to finish his speech for it to go to sleep. Anytime. All right, it's coming up. All right. All right. So now that we're up, I'm going to go ahead and launch Expression Web. All right. I guess we're up. OK. So I've launched Expression Web, and I'm going to bring in a site that, well, it might be familiar to you. I stole it shamelessly from the homepage of the Microsoft.com homepage. And so the trick is, if we look at this page, it's a static page. It has an image. It looks pretty good. But what we're going to do is we're going to ramp that up a little bit and replace the static image with an ASP.NET control that will let us show video using Silverlight. And it's really, really easy. So what I'm going to do is, and if you notice over here, I talked about how we're going to support Ajax, ASP.NET Ajax within the product. And you see a little bit of that in the toolbox. I'll come back to that in a little bit later in a different demo. But for this moment, I'm going to go ahead and grab the script manager control, the ASP.NET Ajax script manager control. That's a requirement for the Silverlight Media ASP.NET control. I'm going to go ahead and drag that onto the page as well. Then delete the element we're replacing, the static image. And make a few tweaks. We're going to resize it so it fits a little bit better within the space. Just change the height and width a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pick a media file we're going to play. And click Open. And we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this in the browser. And it's this ASP.NET page, so it's going to launch the ASP.NET development server. That's actually pre-configured for you once you install the product. And in a moment, it's going to launch the page. And here we go. We got the player up. And we got video. That's it.
Anyone here?
So to add support for media, support for video into the product, it's literally that easy. So I'm going to come back to the tool. So obviously, creating an experience using video is trivial. But let's say you want to make it a slightly better experience by customizing it to fit a little bit more around what the video is and where it's going. So the control that you see here is still very much in development. It's a part of the ASP.NET Futures. And so when we ship it, it's going to have a number of built-in skins that will let you customize the UI around some of the player controls. And so I'm going to use one of the pre-built skins, the game skin, which is more along the lines of the Xbox video that I started to play. Select it. Go ahead and click OK. And now we see a preview of that in the designer. And just like that, all I've done is by choosing a different skin, I've really changed around what the experience is for the customers coming to the site. And again, all I need to do is save the page. And now let's go ahead and preview it in Firefox. Again, ASP.NET Development Server comes up. And in a moment, we're going to see the page play in Firefox. All right. That easy. So again, you didn't see me writing any code, just a few properties, and we're good to go. So this is a great experience. But let's say that we wanted to go away a little bit from the pre-built skins and take a skin and customize it. And so what we can do is we can either start from scratch, or we can take one of the pre-built skins, export it, and then tweak it to our needs. So I'm going to show you that briefly. So I'm going to go ahead and take the skin that we used initially, the professional skin, and export it. Let's call that new skin. And notice at the bottom of the page, it's already set that to use next time we come back. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now it's a custom skin, so we don't get a preview yet. We may when we actually ship the control. So now I'm going to go ahead and minimize this and launch the preview, the May preview of Expression Blend. And this tool is available for download right now and lets you work with Silverlight from within Blend. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. Just pick Silverlight. And then bring in the element that I had just exported. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then pick that on the left. So now you see a zoomed-in view of the skin that was in the control that we used initially. And so I'm a big fan of the University of Washington Huskies, so I'm going to go ahead and take the play button and make it purple. That's the color of the Huskies. So now this is a very simple, very trivial modification of the skin, but it shows you the power of taking the existing skin and modifying it as you see fit to meet your needs. So let's go ahead and pick this play pause button on the left. Let's pick the path that is the actual background for that button. And if we notice on the left, we have gradients telling it to go from white to blue. So what I'm going to do now is pick some of those gradient points, drag them over to the purple part of the spectrum, and we'll just go ahead and save the page after that. So let's see here, and we can see the button becoming more purple right on the fly, and so that's all right. So I'm going to go ahead and do File Save. And so we're good. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, come back to Expression Web, and now if I go to preview the page, we should see after the ASP.NET Development Server starts up and runs the page with ASP.NET, we should see the same control come up, but now clearly the button is purple. And so it's that easy to make changes to the skins that come pre-built, so you're not really hemmed in by what we ship. And certainly, this is a very simple change, but it shows you the whole range of the things you can do by integrating some of the other tools in the Expression family and Expression Blend. So to finally wrap up this part of our demo, what I'm going to do is take in, if you saw the keynote, Wayne Smith created a great skin for video on stage. It looked really good. So we want to go ahead and bring that in, make it a little bit more expressive, make things fly in. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how we can do that very quickly and easily from Expression Web 2. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and grab some of the files that I know are prerequisites for this skin and just import them into my project. So we got those. And then I'm going to come over to the control, pick the skin, click OK, and we got a preview. And now I'm going to make a few more property changes. First of all, I know that this skin has a slightly different aspect ratio, so I'm going to go ahead and change that a little bit, resize, and notice that we get a resize on the page. Similarly, this skin requires a little bit more interaction, and so some of that interaction has actually been wrapped up in an XML configuration file that I'm going to bring in here now. And so these could be reusable, and I brought it in when I imported the demo files from that folder, so I'm going to go ahead and set that here. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and pick a different video file. This is the same one that Wayne used earlier this morning. And so I'm going to hit Save and then preview the page. So we should see the ASP.NET Development Server start up, and the page come up, and now you see elements fly in. And it's a pretty cool experience. Okay. Just a second. Oh, I don't know why we're having... All right. The same. Okay? All right. So it's that easy to go from just simple skins that are pre-built, take skins that are pre-built, export them, and customize them for your own use. And certainly then you can go above and beyond by creating a brand new skin using some of the other expression tools and bring them into Expression Web and watch them live here. So as you can see, bringing in, I'm going to switch back to the slides now. As you can see, bringing in media into Expression Web 2 is really easy. And nowhere in this demo did you see me write any code. In fact, some of the files that I use, like the media definition file, they're just very simple XML files that name some of the elements around the interactivity. Also, this example uses ASP.NET, the ASP.NET Media Control for Silverlight, but we'll provide a similar type of experience for HTML and JavaScript when Expression Web 2 ships. So let's go on and talk a little bit about some of the other technologies we're looking at building into the product. One of them is support for PHP. As I mentioned earlier, you guys asked, well, we're hoping to deliver. So one of the things that we're going to be building in is support for PHP. And so what that means to us initially is support for recognizing that we have PHP pages, that pages may have a PHP script within them. We have the ability to insert snippets of PHP code automatically into your pages. This will reduce some of the drudgery around creating script. And if you notice where the arrows are, that's where your cursor is going to wind up. So as soon as you insert the snippet, you'll be in the right place to continue coding. We're also going to provide a great experience visually around server-side includes for PHP. And so what that means is, right here I have a screenshot of 2 pages with the main one being in blue and sample.php being in the orange. And what we're seeing is a file that's going to be incorporated on the server side at runtime. But we get a preview of it, of what it's going to look like at design time. So that creates, again, a very compelling design time experience for you when coding with PHP. Now, I want to touch base on one other thing. We're showing you this functionality using slides because we're still building it. So again, we welcome your feedback across the board, and we want to make sure that the features that we're developing, that are actually, some of them are actually in the product right now, meet your needs. So I just want to re-emphasize that again. And moving on, in PHP, we're going to help you code PHP as well. Now, Expression Web is a design tool, but we understand that you're going to write some code. And so when it comes to PHP code, we're going to do color coding in code view for you as well. And that's all customizable as well. Now, we've talked about media support. We've talked about our support for PHP. And the other element for us is our planned support for ASP.NET AJAX. Now, I touched on that a little bit in the demo that I used with the ASP.NET Media Control. But really what we're talking about is taking the ASP.NET AJAX extensions that are currently available and rolling them right in the box. So they'll be installed with the product, they'll be available throughout the product, and you'll be able to access them easily. And so I already showed the use of the script manager control, but the other controls that are part of the standard package are also there. And in addition to that, we're currently investigating support for the ASP.NET AJAX toolkit, which is being developed by the community on CodePlex. So moving on, let me do a quick demo of what you can possibly accomplish with ASP.NET AJAX using Expression Web. Now, I have to say that this is a very simplified version of an ASP.NET AJAX example that you can find at ajax.asp.net. Strongly encourage you to go over there. They have some great video examples, really tell you what is possible with the platform and how easy it is to get really rich AJAX interactivity with your ASP.NET pages without much work at all. And so what I'm going to do now is switch to a different project that I built. And if you're familiar at all with that ajax.asp.net site, this will be sort of familiar. I built a very simple task list using ASP.NET and data binding in the data grid with an access data source. So it's a very simple table. It has a few descriptions of tasks that I want to do around MIX. And so I've created a page that data binds that and with ASP.NET. Now, I've created this page without writing any code in Expression Web, and it didn't take me very long. But you know, it's a very simple example, and that's the whole point of it. We don't want to show too much of what of the code that we have, but it's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot going on there. So coming back to design view, if I go ahead and run this page, I'm going to just go ahead and preview it in Internet Explorer, but same page obviously runs in Firefox and Safari and whatnot. And so we're going to get the ASP on the development server to come up, and it's going to show the page for us. And again, it's very straightforward. And when I interact with this page, I can page through, I can sort, not a whole lot going on there. But if you notice, if you look carefully, as I interact with the data grid, I see a brief flash while the page reloads completely. And so in many cases, that's fine. But what I'd like to do is actually restrict how much of the page updates to just this data grid. In this example, there's not a whole lot going on. But if you had a large page with lots of elements, you would only really want to refresh this part. So let's see what we can do to make that happen using Expression Web and ASP.NET Ajax. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and come back to our design service and drag out the script manager control. This is a prerequisite for ASP.NET Ajax. And then I'm going to drag out the update panel control. Now, let's keep in mind, I haven't written any code yet, and I'm not gonna. It's going to be that easy. So the update panel, if you're not familiar, please. But the update panel lets you take a set of ASP.NET elements and capture them, and then only provide updates to the parts of the page that are within the update panel. And this will happen for you automatically. And so what I'm going to do now is take this data grid that we've been interacting with and drag it into the update panel. So now anything within the update panel, which includes this data grid, will be updated using Ajax on the fly and without reloading the whole page on the client. And so that's all I have to do. That's the whole demo. Now I'm just going to run it. Yep, got to save the changes. So again, we're going to start up ASP.NET. It's going to load the page for us. And it looks very similar. But as I click here, you'll notice that the page doesn't reload. Right? Because before you would see a white flash as the background got applied, but in this case it doesn't. And so I can do all the things that I did to the data grid before, page, sort, whatnot, without actually having a whole page reload on the client side. And so it's that easy to add simple interactivity and go from regular ASP.NET to ASP.NET Ajax using Expression Web 2. Now in some cases, as you go and provide more advanced experiences, certainly you'll need to write code. But in this case, many of the things you want to do won't require that. So let's switch back to the slides and talk about a few other things that we're doing in the product in addition to what I've already described. One of the things we're doing is we're doing some design surface updates. And one of them is support for the CSS overflow attribute. It's going to improve the kind of design time experience and rich interactive experience we provide on the design surface so that you can get a sense of what your page will look like even before running it within the browser. We're also going to fix a lot of issues related to small things that aren't really bugs, but things that really improve the workflow. Like, for example, saving username and passwords for FTP publishing. It's not a big deal, but we understand you do it a lot, and so we want to help you out. Finally, there's a whole range of improvements that are probably on the smaller order, but add up to pretty good improvement for the tool. Things like, for example, handling byte order mark encoding better for things that are not the standard encodings. I think there's room to improve in that area for us. And so, to summarize, as Eric showed you, XWeb 1.0 is a really great tool. We're really proud of it. I think we really hit the ball out of the park with our 1.0 version. It's standard-based, it's a professional design tool, and we feel strongly that it's a really great tool for you guys to use when creating standards-based websites. And we want to build on that in Expression Web 2 with support for media, for better support for media, really rich interactive support for media on the design surface, support for PHP, and support for ASP.NET Ajax. But, as I said previously, and I've said it over and over again, but it's true, we're really working on this product right now. We're not just up here from marketing talking about what the product is going to be like. We're going to go back on Monday and get back to work. So, what we really want to do is get your feedback, your questions, your concerns, and really try to incorporate that into the product. As Eric mentioned, Expression Web 1.0 is available now. You all have it. We encourage you guys to get your friends to download the trial and try it out. It's free. And then Expression Web 2 is, as I said, in development. And in the near future, we're going to have a preview for you to play around with and provide feedback. So, questions, we're here. Certainly, you can go to connect.microsoft.com, but we're open and ready to answer your questions both here and later. So please, welcome. Thank you.
So let me just add that if anybody has feedback, so we're about 4 months into the development cycle of this product, right? We released our last product at the end of last year, and we had a lot of discussion about should we even show any new features here because we don't know if we'll get them all in, and because maybe we want to hide our secrets or something. And the reason that we came here really this week, and the reason that Boris and I are passionate about showing up here, is because we wanted to show you what we're thinking now early, when we have a chance to change it. So I would say, first of all, if you don't like the direction we're going, let us know. Go to that connect.microsoft.com website and file out a request for change. But if you do like it, I got to say this too, right? We're still, as Boris said, early in development. And if you saw a feature that you think is excellent and you really hope that it's in 2.0, also send us information about that, because the more data we get back that you like the features that we're doing, the higher the chances that it'll be in the 2.0 product. And I think with that, we're going to open up the floor to questions. Thank you very much. Great. Yeah, if you have questions, can you go back to the microphone so that we can save it for posterity?
Yeah, we can probably hear you, but we're doing a recording that people are going to be able to access later, and so I think that the voice quality on the questions is going to be better from the mic. I know we all hate using it, but...
In the French release of Microsoft Expression...
I'm sorry?
In the French release of Microsoft Expression Web, there isn't any doc type or Squark doc type for Internet Explorer 7.
So there are two questions there. I think your questions were, one, is there a French release of Expression Web? And then the second one...
No, I know there is one.
Okay, sure. Okay, good.
But in it, you can't address the doc type of Internet Explorer 7.
So in fact, we have the ability to create new doc types. So if you don't see a list, something in the list of doc types, you can feel free to create your own, and it'll work with us. And if you wanted to send me an email about how to do that, it'd be fine. Or see any of us. We have a hands-on lab going on, and if you were to speak to any of the Expression Web team there, they could show you how to do that right there. And we will be updating the doc types that we use, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, first, I'd like to say excellent presentations. I actually understood what you were talking about, and that's an accomplishment. I am confused, though, however, on one thing. Maybe I've missed something, but I think I just missed my... Am I still there?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to know what the difference is now between ASP.NET 2.0 and Expressions Web. Why are we having this new product just after the release of 2.0?
Right.
I'm a little confused.
Okay, so no, it's a pretty common question. So here's the way to think about this. So first of all, Expression Web is very different from ASP.NET 2.0. In fact, if you look at most of the press we get, you hear a lot of people talking about how great a tool we are for editing, even if there's no ASP.NET in the mix. So what is ASP.NET? It's a server-side platform. It's like PHP. It's a server-side scripting language that generates, HTML. And it's one of several platforms that Expression Web can edit, right? So in other words, Expression Web is really a design tool versus ASP.NET, which is a web platform.
Yeah, but aren't I'm scripting, I'm using code behind pages in ASP2, in Web Expressions, are you not? So isn't that the server-side scripting that you're talking about or not? Or why am I going to use, why am I going to want to stay with ASP.NET 2.0? It has some pretty serious design problems as far as I'm concerned, and not use Web Expressions. What am I going to be losing by going to Expressions from ASP? So
really those two are orthogonal. You can go to Expression Web and go to ASP.NET 2.0 or not. You can also go to ASP.NET 2.0 and choose to use just Visual Studio or just Expression Web or just Notepad. Really, Expression Web is just a tool for editing different types of web technologies. One of those web technologies is ASP.NET 2.0. I'd say maybe if you have some more questions on that, you stop by our hands-on lab and we'd be happy to answer questions. Hi.
Hi there.
I was wondering how this would fit into a workflow with developers and source control and Team Foundation Server and all of that sort of stuff.
So that's certainly something we're looking at. Can't talk in specifics yet because it's still very much being planned. I touched on some of the developer designer workflow that we're looking at, and certainly the things that you bring up we know about. We're thinking about them. And so we want to work with Visual Studio as much as we can. Now, one of the things that's going to be interesting is that Visual Studio, the vNext Orcus, right, is going to have the same design surface in it from a graphical area as Expression Web 1.0. And so when you work with a developer, when he opens that page in Visual Studio, he's going to get a similar representation of what it looks like in Design View. Beyond that, we're looking at things like source control and check-in, check-out, and TFS as well.
Absolutely. So I would say that is something that we are absolutely looking at. It's something that at some point we know that we will have at some point. If you're interested in getting it soon, go to that website and say that you want it.
Okay, but potentially in 2.0, this can be production ready for teams to work together?
So,
as we've said, we're planning on it. This is the next version that we're working on. It's on our list, but we want to get feedback from you guys as to what's important to you, our customers. And so if it is, let us know, and we'll certainly take that into account as we do some of our feature planning.
Okay, I'm going to go send an email.
Well, thank you. Please do.
When you talk about the planned support for the Ajax Control Toolkit, you're talking about visual designers too? To use them?
Right.
Okay. And what about other JavaScript libraries? Will there any way for third parties to add support for that?
So we know that ultimately if we limit ourselves to only having ultimately an ASP.NET story for Ajax, then there's a whole segment of the web design market that we wouldn't address. And just like how we're going into PHP, we're absolutely looking at that. Just so everybody's aware, we're looking to do a fairly quick, short release, which is one of the reasons you don't see a big list of features here. Again, if you think that that's a great feature, go here and tell us, because we're really looking for your feedback. But I'd say we have an eye on that, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to talk about the PHP support. Will you have IntelliSense or any kind of documentation linked in from php.net?
So we're at the beginning of our road for PHP, right? And you're going to see PHP improvements across a number of releases. One of the things that we talked about was, okay, we could do a big full PHP release that would have all the stuff you just talked about, but that would mean that you wouldn't see any PHP features for some period of time. We'd like to get PHP, at least some support, into the box as soon as possible and continue to enhance that. So the features you saw here were what we said. We think that you can get very good PHP support even with this. We know that people want other stuff, things like IntelliSense. If you think that that's something critical for you, sorry to sound like a broken record, go tell us.
Please, please. But yeah, we understand that that's certainly an important part of the PHP creation experience. And so it's part of the whole spectrum that we're looking to address.
Right.
I noticed that in Expression 2, you had to tab between Blend and Expression 2 again. Why isn't it more closely integrated between Blend and Expression 2?
So, we brought these products together very quickly for a 1.0 studio release. And as a result of that meant that we, in order to get all of those products together, they really came from some different places in their lives. And we're at the beginning of that integration, right? And I don't know where that goes. Do we all have a common shell like VS or do we not? I don't think anyone's made any decisions in those kinds of areas. We're absolutely committed in the long term to having great integration and whatever that means. Right? But in the 2.0 release, I would say our emphasis is on getting great products in each of those spaces. And then in addition, we will be constantly working on improving our integration story.
And to sort of touch a little bit further on what Eric just said, we understand that there's probably room for improvement in terms of how these products interact. But at the same time, we feel confident that we are going to be able to address some of the major workflows between Expression Blend, between Expression Design, and Expression Web. And so we'll do some of that via documentation, via some other links within the products, and we'll see how far we can get in meeting those main scenarios.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I was curious. You guys said that you were thinking of doing a shorter release for 2.0. Can you give us a sense of how long 1.0 took so we can know what that relatively means?
Can you just speak up? I'm sorry.
So how long did 1.0 take? So we can't really talk about dates, okay? But let's just say you're not going to be waiting 5 years for it, okay? Do you want to talk about it a little bit more in depth than that?
Just to say that in terms of 1.0, of course, we leveraged a lot of existing Microsoft IP to get 1.0, and so we got 1.0 together very quickly. But
it still took a while, though.
Yeah, but I wouldn't use that as a benchmark to say when are we going to have out 2.0 and all of that.
Right.
So
in terms of most software companies, and especially Microsoft, it'll be a quick release. But we still want to do the right thing and make it a great, stable product and have some great features that are compelling. And so it's going to take us a little while.
Great.
But actually, one more thing that I want to touch base on. So even though we're working on the product right now, and it's going to take a little while for us to get it out the door, you will be seeing in the near future, months, not years, releases of previews that you can play around with and give us feedback that we feel are going to be fairly stable and potentially even feature complete at that point.
Certainly we see a lot of new features that are added in with this product that we didn't have before. Now we hopefully will and use. But it seems to me that, it's loud. It seems to me that everything was integrated, and then when the work got too much, it got split up and then got advanced separately from each other. For example, Visual Studio ASP.NET combo, and now we got a different editor that has additional features to it than the Visual Studio itself. Even it seems like it's using a lot of the same engines, maybe refactored or somewhat. So does that mean that we're going to have using this type of an approach and then reintegrating everything? So are we going to have more functionality like better graphs, charting, data displays, more customizable things? And things like, is that kind of where the future is going with these products?
So I'm just going to rephrase your question. And
sure.
What you were talking about the fact that, back 10 years ago you had Visual Studio, or maybe you had Visual InterDev 10 years ago.
A couple years ago.
Right. And now you've got a number of offerings. And the question was about, are we going to continue to specialize and go into different spaces? You're going to see more fracturing, right? And my answer to that would be this. When it comes to web design, web designers really are a different market than web developers. And that's really why you see a different tool here. And that's because there really is a different market with different needs and different focus. What I don't think you should worry about is, is Visual Studio going to fracture into 7 more products or something like that? But we do believe absolutely that design is different enough from development that it deserves its own tool. Now, we are committed to making sure that you get a great, easy-to-use workflow. If you're a designer-developer and you do both coding and you do design, then absolutely we should make sure that you have a good, pleasant experience working between the two. But we do believe in the long run, giving you 2 specific tools for 2 specific tasks, that's going to give you the best experience possible.
So, and there will be overlap in some of their feature sets, just as there overlap in the work that developers and designers do. But ultimately, sort of around the edges, around what you actually do as a professional designer versus a professional developer, you have different needs, and that's why we're bringing 2 different products to the market.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So if no more questions, we're also going to be available throughout the conference in the hand-on labs. You can certainly find us or anybody else wearing a lei, I believe, right? And then if you have other questions, feel free to send us personal email or send email or post questions via the Connect website. We look forward to your feedback. We're really anticipating it. And thank you so much for your time here.
Thank you very much.